Black History Month began this week, and though the name might suggest it's mostly about looking back at past events, it's also very much about looking forward. Ashley Okwuosa is TVO's diversity and inclusion reporter, and she joins us now from the provincial capital to explain. Hello, Ashley.
Hi, Jan.
All right, so Black History Month began in Canada in 1995. How did it exactly come about?
So I was actually able to speak to Dr. Jean Augustine, who in 1995, as a member of parliament, brought forth the vote to officially designate February as Black History Month in Canada. And the vote passed unanimously. And Dr. Augustine pointed out that at the time, social justice issues or issues that really affected Black Canadians weren't, I guess you would say, front and center at Parliament. But for her, what she wanted to do with recognizing February as Black History Month was really about, making sure that the truth and the experiences of Black people in Canada were recognized, and to make sure that in schools, the history of Black people in Canada, the migration of Black people in Canada, the contributions of Black people in Canada, and the diversity of Black people in Canada were really recognized.
So now let's fast forward. It's fairly ingrained in Canadian culture that February is Black History Month. How can we guard against it becoming a thing to do rather than a meaningful commemoration or a call to action for change?
Yeah, I think that the conversations about the realities of Black people today is really incredibly important. And you kind of alluded to that in the beginning. The month is called Black History Month, and we're encouraged and called to look back. But it would be a disservice to look back without really acknowledging that Black people are still advocating for certain things today, and really acknowledging how racism still affects Black people today. So I think that by looking at the past, we shouldn't almost delude ourselves into thinking that we're in a post-racial society. I think we still need to acknowledge that there's a lot of work to be done.
And let's talk about that work. There are a number of organizations that during this month, put together, sort of statements and such like that. But I want to talk from a media standpoint because we are reporters. How can media organizations who are marking this month help advance progress towards eliminating anti-Black racism, but also talking about a little bit what you said about making sure that we talk about not just the history, but moving that forward?
Yeah, I think that work done by media organizations to commemorate this month should be done all year round, right? And that includes hiring Black journalists at every level. One Black reporter, two Black reporters in a newsroom isn't really enough. I would say that to truly reflect the diversity of Black experience in a place like Canada or like Ontario, newsrooms really should try to look like the communities that they're covering. And when media organizations do hire Black journalists, they should listen to them and support them. And, when it comes to the stories that these media organizations are telling about Black people, I think that we, and, I say we, all of us journalists included, shouldn't really rely on narratives and stereotypes about, Black people. We should be thinking outside the box. We should be telling stories about Black joy and Black innovation. I think there's so much focus on the struggle. This month is not just about the struggle. Black people, the experience of Black people is not just about the struggle.
So let's talk about progress. Obviously, from 1995 to now, what progress has come out of Black History Month, do you think?
That's a big question, and I think it's only been 4 days this year, so I don't know, about this year, and I don't think anyone knows yet. But I will say that in the last 2 or so years, with the pandemic, with the unfortunate high-profile deaths of Black people, both in the U.S. and Canada, I would like to think that more people would be willing and open to having more conversations about lasting change, and not just performative commemorations, but real change.
All right, so let's talk about some of the articles that you have coming out this month. You are writing one about a charter that I don't think a lot of people know about. It's called the Scarborough Charter. Tell us about that and how it sort of came to be.
Yeah, so the Scarborough Charter is being described as the first national action plan to tackle anti-Black racism in higher education. About 50, or more so 51 post-secondary institutions in Canada have signed on to this charter. 25 of them, I believe, are in Ontario. And the charter has four principles that aim to address anti-Black racism on campus. So, for example, one of these principles looks like inclusive excellence, or it's called inclusive excellence. And according to the charter, this can be done by recruiting and supporting Black staff, creating Black and Black Canadian studies programs in classrooms, and really developing pathways for access to higher education for Black students in the community.
Now, sometimes, some people will say when post-secondary institutions release statements on anti-Black racism, it can feel performative. When we talk about post-secondary institutions and we talk about sort of the Scarborough Charter, what are actual things happening? Are there tangible things?
Yeah, so I would say that in the last year or so, a number of post secondary institutions in Ontario have put forth action plans, have put together task forces. The University of Windsor, for example, has put together an anti Black racism task force that at the end of last year, I believe, brought forth recommendations that included creating spaces for Black students, collecting demographic data, things like that. And also, one thing to point about the University of Windsor example is that this task force is also made up of students, of Black students. So I think making sure that Black students are having their voices and concerns heard are one thing that universities are doing. Some institutions are also making sure to create offices, real higher, I guess, higher up office positions or administrative positions with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion so that people in those positions can actually affect change.
I also understand you're working on some articles, some Q&As, but also an article about female Black voices sort of in political circles. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think it's the story is really about the experience of Black women in politics in Ontario. I've spoken to a number of women who've run for office at different levels in the province, and we're really talking about what their experience has been, during the election process when they did get into office, and also talking to experts about what's the importance of having Black women and their voices in these political spaces, and what can we do to increase participation, and how is it that having Black women in these spaces actually, how does that reflect on voters? How does that kind of encourage us in any way?
Ashley, I want to thank you so much for this. Look forward to all of the work that you have coming up this month, but of course, the conversation that should continue well beyond February. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chan.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.